thanks very much to Steve for inviting us down here, and you'll have to excuse my voice. I've had flu for a week, so this is the first time I've got up. And also to say thanks for the opportunity to collaborate. I'm not going to say much about what we've done, except that it's been a bit like word tennis for the last 2 weeks. And the deal has been that each time we knock this poem backwards and forwards, it loses a line. So we started with 28 lines and worked it down to 1. Shall I say anything else? Do you think it's leading, isn't it?
Well, we won't do it all.
No, we're just going to do 10.
Quite long.
Okay. Are you savant that flesh comes to you named in colours, beautiful and impasto? Tell me it isn't tragic when light descends on newest skin, the curl of a neck. What is the colour? I can't say. Breaking through the face where time renders it wide as reclaimed land, spilt rain. Is it solace that finds you rose? Or waking with it, a shepherd's warning shifts you along, knowing you alive yet slipped into something wholly abstract? Don't go there. Stay. This flesh is warm and marked in parturition. The face gives way to harm. Its weight is red. Red is this day corrosion where blush would be acting on. What is taken away or begins expelling in the soft paleness where minutes pass, not suffused but colour stripped from worldliness, and outside worn on skin, life abrasions. Barriers give way to rust and inundation. For now, you are a child. You have not seen this colour. Remain unknowing in larger scale, bold and meticulous. In your red stare, life moves fast. Words are outflung birds, colour without capture. But flesh binds you tight to palate, builds its fens and ochres. Your pink wash and plasmas weep it.
Don't go there. Stay. Where the hand moves through the delicate closures of the spectrum, which is now flesh, now water, now a compound of shadow and accident. The terrace exposed, the cranium alight with hair, hat, awning, breeze, all obscurities. If birth were a language, if the clear and icy blue of the imagination could be named, the eye speaks its own tongue, understands its own idiolect, its patois of slurs and blindings, knows how to follow a moving dot, recognizes rose, thrift, geranium and all the dustings of grass. The pram curls round the child as if it were nature on a mission to protect its stranger productions. What we seal in language breaks open in front of us, the very idea of us broken into leaves, molecules, atoms. We are broken down into these infinitesimal spots of light and sound. Listen. Wings, winds, blinds, pinks, mornings, rain with its caesures. Something is focusing and gone. Gone again. But we like it, meaning you and I and we in our aspects of liking. It is, isn't it, as if we could drown in gestures of liking. Too much. Then again, too much. Too much of gesture, enough words, but not enough of colour or terrace or awning or child, of the rough hand about its business, of the thought of the sea at the back of the head, of nothing and no one. This, we say, is a spectrum. This is what we may clutch and abandon. And we know not to stay there. We go.
She remains, or there is silence, her side of facehood coming into speech. Might it be a roar or in attenuation a thread clutched onto? We, a future conflagration, its shadows light her face, a glow, a burn. Language tries to seal, but it is a raw thing in truth. Coming to her lips, her eyes know where pity is, Adult shame, lives lost, complicity with what is out of reach and nonetheless a naming. All else is translation, and there again a strangeness of arriving. Birth, marked, is a red stain bursting from a pod, is broadcast. Her face can't escape it, eyes water, though skin resolves to the right, becomes colour of paper, blanched, free to compromise. Which is the closer lived? Sheen of planes of attention, knowing herself watched. Why is she of consequence to this older gaze and its dehiscence? Hers is keener. A mackerel shoal disaggregating crosses skin, sounds of shouts and speed, streamlines entering into the thought she is, would be blue and silver with deeper bruise running gauntlets, murmur it, plunging into flight. Does she run to sound?
All else is translation. Thus, and thus, and thus, dustings, court puff, dead skin, dehiscence, dehiscence. It is a breaking down into phonemes of colour, spectra, spectra, spectrala. See, you move and stay still. That is translation. One speaks, so to say, translationally, rawly of raw things, of lips sinking, sound sunk, lips sunk. Every speck goes missing. Every speck is a pointillist gesture. Every spectrala. Look, here is a head on a lap. Here is a head between palms. Here is a voice we have suddenly recognized, emerging from its camouflage, its natural colouring, blended, bladed, bled into correspondence. He does not speak, he parses. It passes through puns and penury into this form of speech, into what remains, into the remainders, the remnants, the remonstrances, into the monstrous that slips like all slippages out of the core into its own marginalia, its reimagining into the perpetual hover between desire and its objects, into its own remaining.
Perpetual hover. What breaks into clear liquor runs from open blasts and clots, refusing binding, stays wet for days, posed for medical magazines, flushed through crimson, spread as thin as flight, taking off through branches, each a possible movement without investigation, line of trees switched in shuddered time-lapse, tissue factors begin swarm, held in full suspension are crimson, but words swim, straw, and coagulate. She runs to loosen or blot. There are starling forces building across her face, needing universal donors. Sit down, why don't you? Watch the slippage, it waits close by to catch you, gazing. Wet stuff on the face turns to drizzle in late morning. Clouds, while the roof gives way to missiles. Small sons lost to armies try speech out. Who did this? Her image is removed from supermarkets against a blue background. Perhaps there is no sound here. I would pass it while it knits. Prompt her from the mark she wears, still wet on the wall, still heavier with flesh and beginning.
And then a child, the magazine, the shops, the rain, still heavier with beginning, gravities of footfall and knittage, the shapes blossoming, unblossoming into a continuous inward rain, whose levels are the colours of pooling, while there remains the unparsed, yet to be parsed, sentence that runs like water down glass, down trees, down the channels of vision into this and thus, into blasts and clots of sub-speech, unspeech, a speech caught before it can unblossom into the credible, which may well be a child at the beginning, before the detached heavy syllables of word or phrase or sentence form up into their rhetoric of becoming. It is the gazing at slippage, the apprehensions, the child at its alphabet of breath, the movement of the mouth, and the rain, the crimson, the time lapse. Or what it is to be thus and thus and thus depicted like raindrops, like heavy, like stepping into the round phrases of rain that collects at your feet and vanishes.
Pooling, Gravity overrides the flow, settles in limbs and organs, striations purple where the body decides on verbs. Growing pains are venous or bright arterial. So much breath stored and circulating, ready for articulation, stammered out in sleep among empty rooms, sloughed out, unblossomed. Just get on with walking. Language comes on in rushes, those first prints, noisy as similitudes overheard on distant radios, forces, favourites tuned into adult ears or listening in like drones, like seersucker or texture of air, adolescent whoops swaying to collection somewhere. Circulation stops. Her face is taller than this room, so much caught across in wheels where paint rides up, wants to drive back. The ruse of language keeps to dams and foreign flats like tides referring to continental shelves, suddenly sucked out to temporary sight. Neighborhoods in chance exposure, mouths are chimneys and vents. They spew and smoke in meteoric waters, bacterial whispering.
Stammered out in sleep in empty rooms. Words creep up on each other. Someone sleeps among the pillows, oubliettes and tombs. Someone is moving silently through deeps of sleep, past wrecks of continental shelves, where luminous fish explore forgotten heaps of unused language that must feed themselves. Someone is awake among the tides. They rise on all fours where the evidence dissolves. They break. They stammer. Their open eyes register the space. They speak as eyes do, in a syntax of moving objects, watchful spies. Something is falling apart in the beautiful blue of the impossible sky. Skin, light, no common purpose. The child is passing through the spaces of the mother crying, oh, oh, of nothing, of need, of words, of this breakage, this construction of the low hum of paint, of pain. We watch words kiss goodbye to each other. We too go. The rain is falling without rancor or emphasis.
Something takes shape, internal hailing, where hooks bring rhyme to relief, and landed walk these lines, their fine reverb, stammering flick-flacks in the net where breathing returns in balance, remains this side of silence, blown and heaving, elements in play, unsung. What is awake, stirred, read, unanswered in sound, the tricking out of feet, limbed and forgotten anatomies, mouth of fish. Finds air newly blistered where water gives way to travelling light, pockets of plosive caretaking, mimicry in salt flats ribbed by retreating waters, her face smooth as drainage, finds rain without echo. That point of expansion suddenly wider. Begin here, set spinning beyond equivalences, red stairs, sprint out impaired economies, other pleatings, pleat this case, as in some repetition turned Bakelite, in the heat, where jets and sprites take off, only to get the hang of it.
Truths from the mouths of fish. Oh, 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 that Eliotian rag, once upon a time in a quest. I've misheard more than I ever heard. We live by oh, oh, the misheard oh of French water. We duck and dive out of language into this. Once upon a time there was a was, once upon a time there'll be an is. Let us make something beautiful out of water as it streaks and rises. Let us say, let us, to the fish of our complexion. Let us spread our lettuce across the surface of the pond and look to nibble them from beneath. Let the waves spread out as the fish rise and fall back into stony water. Let the waves spread out as the fish rise and fall back into stony water. Let us arrange meetings, let us praise and get the hang of it. Let us repeat after ourselves. This thing that is us, please let us. Thank you.